They say you never truly know who you're sleeping next to until the bank calls. Nathaniel Brooks thought he had it all: the penthouse, the respect, and the perfect fiancée. He thought the silence in his house was just a lover's quarrel. He was wrong. When he found the diamond engagement ring sitting alone on the marble kitchen island, he assumed she was just making a scene. But when he tried to buy a coffee 3 days later, his card was declined. Then his backup card. Then his business account. By the time he realized his identity had been erased, she was already ghost. And the worst part, she didn't just take his money. She took the one secret that could ruin his life forever. Stay tuned, because this isn't just a breakup, it's a demolition. The silence in the penthouse wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums, demanding to be acknowledged. Nathaniel Brooks adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, admiring the sharp cut of his bespoke navy suit. He was a man who appreciated precision. As the CEO of Brooks & Partners, one of the city's leading architectural firms, he dealt in lines, angles, and concrete certainties. He didn't do chaos. "Veronica," he called out, checking his watch. 7:45 a.m. Usually the smell of dark roast coffee and the sound of low-volume jazz filled the kitchen by now. Today the air was stale. He walked into the kitchen, his leather loafers clicking against the floor. The sleek, modern space was pristine. No coffee brewing, no breakfast plates, just the cold morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the skyline he had helped build. And there, in the dead center of the white marble island, sat a single object. It caught the light, fracturing it into a dozen tiny rainbows. The engagement ring, a 3-carat oval cut set in platinum. He had spent a small fortune on it 6 months ago, not because he was particularly sentimental, but because a man of his stature needed a wife who looked the part. Nathaniel stopped. He stared at the ring, a frown creasing his forehead. "Veronica!" he yelled louder this time. He marched to the master bedroom. The bed was made hospital corners, perfectly tight. He yanked open the walk-in closet. Her side was weird. It wasn't empty. That would have been a cliché. Her evening gowns were there. Her winter coats were there. But the everyday things, the jeans, the comfortable sweaters, the sneakers she wore to the gym, gone. He checked the bathroom. Her toothbrush was missing. Her expensive face creams were still on the shelf, but her makeup bag was gone. Nathaniel let out a sharp, cynical laugh. He walked back to the kitchen and picked up the ring, tossing it in his palm. "Dramatic," he muttered to himself. "Very dramatic, Ronnie." They had argued the night before. It was a stupid argument, the kind they had often. She wanted to know more about his past, about the years before he arrived in the city, before the money. He had told her sharply that the past was dead, and she needed to stop digging graves. She had gone quiet. He assumed she was sulking. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." He paused, pulling the phone away from his ear to stare at the screen. He dialed again. "The number you have reached. Unbelievable," Nathaniel scoffed. He slipped the ring into his pocket. She changed her number. Over a fight. He wasn't worried. He was annoyed. Veronica was a beautiful woman, but she had a flair for the theatrical. She probably went to her sister's place in upstate New York or checked into the Four Seasons downtown to teach him a lesson. She wanted him to chase her. She wanted the apology tour. Well, she wasn't going to get it. Nathaniel Brooks didn't chase. He waited. He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the elevator. He had a 9:00 a.m. meeting with the Urban Development Board. A multi-million-dollar contract was on the line. He didn't have time for hide and seek. "She'll be back by Friday," he told the empty elevator. "Once the credit card bill for the hotel hits, she'll realize she needs me more than I need her." That was Nathaniel's fatal flaw. He assumed the power dynamic in their relationship was based on finance. He assumed that because he paid for the life she lived, he owned her loyalty. He arrived at the office greeted by his assistant, Jessica. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks. Your 9:00 a.m. is here." "Coffee, Jessica. Black, and call the florist. Send 24 white roses to the Four Seasons addressed to Veronica. Put a card in there that says, 'Point made. Come home.'" He breezed through his day. He crushed the meeting. He berated a junior architect for a sloppy rendering. He felt powerful. He felt in control. That evening he went home to a dark apartment. He poured himself a scotch and sat on the sofa waiting for the door to open. It didn't. Day 2 passed. Jessica told him the florist couldn't deliver the flowers because there was no Veronica Miller registered at the Four Seasons or the Ritz or the Plaza. "She's playing hard to get," Nathaniel said, waving his hand dismissively. "Cancel the order. If she wants to hide, let her hide." By the morning of day 3, the annoyance had turned into a low-level buzz of anxiety. Not because he missed her, he was too proud to admit that, yet, but because the silence was total. No angry texts, no social media posts. She had deleted her Instagram. Her LinkedIn was gone. It was as if she had been scrubbed from the internet. He sat at his desk, staring at his phone. Maybe I should call the police. No, that would look bad. Local tycoon's fiancé run away. The tabloids would eat it up. He couldn't look weak. "Mr. Brooks," Jessica buzzed in on the intercom. "There's a decline on the corporate card." Nathaniel frowned. "What? The catering for the gala next week. The card was declined. They said it's marked as lost or stolen." "That's ridiculous. I have the card right here." He pulled his wallet out. "Try the Amex." "I did, sir. That one was declined too." A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of Nathaniel's neck. "Transfer me to the bank. Now." He waited on hold, tapping his expensive pen against the mahogany desk. The tapping got faster and faster. "Mr. Brooks," the bank representative said, her voice professional but strained. "We've been trying to reach you. We flagged some unusual activity." "Unusual activity? I didn't authorize any freezes. Unfreeze my accounts immediately." "Sir, we didn't freeze them because of activity. We froze them because the joint holder initiated a total liquidity transfer and then requested a closure of the primary savings, which triggered a fraud alert on the remaining credit lines." Nathaniel stopped tapping. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "Joint holder," he whispered. "I don't have a joint holder. My accounts are private." "Sir, you added Ms. Veronica Miller as a full signatory 3 months ago. You came into the branch and signed the paperwork yourself." "I did no such thing," Nathaniel roared, standing up. "We have your signature, sir, and the biometric verification. The funds, approximately $4.2 million, were wire transferred to a series of offshore holding accounts 48 hours ago." Nathaniel dropped into his chair. He felt like he had been punched in the gut. 3 months ago. He remembered that day. Veronica had come to the office. She brought him lunch. She had some papers for the wedding planner, something about insurance for the venue. He had been on a call, distracted, signing whatever she slid in front of him. "Just sign here, babe. And here. It's for the liability coverage." He had signed his own execution warrant. Where? Nathaniel's voice croaked. Where is the money now? It's gone, sir. It's out of the country. Nathaniel dropped the phone. He looked at the window. The city skyline looked different now. It didn't look like a kingdom he ruled. It looked like she hadn't just left. She had gutted him. But why? He gave her everything. Why steal the money and run? She could have just married him and had access to it all legally. This wasn't just greed. This was personal. He grabbed his coat and ran out of the office, ignoring Jessica's calls. He needed to get to the apartment. He needed to find something. Anything. He burst into the penthouse, tearing through the rooms. He ripped the sheets off the bed. He pulled the drawers out of the dresser, dumping clothes onto the floor. Nothing. He ran to the kitchen. He looked at the marble island where the ring had been. He hadn't noticed it before, but under the fruit bowl there was a small cream-colored envelope. His hands shook as he picked it up. It had his name on it. Nathaniel, written in elegant cursive script. He tore it open. Inside was a single index card. No explanation, no apology. Just a set of coordinates and a name. 41°3' and 73°58. Ask for Arthur. Nathaniel stared at the name. Arthur. He hadn't heard that name in 15 years. The coordinates pointed to a location in Beacon, New York, a small town up the Hudson River. Nathaniel sat in his car, a black Mercedes S-Class, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned ashen. He was currently parked in a gas station lot, staring at the fuel gauge. He had a quarter tank left. He reached for his wallet. He had 4 credit cards, all useless. He had opened his banking app 10 minutes ago, only to see red error messages. Access denied. Contact administrator. He opened the glove compartment and rummaged around. He usually kept an emergency stash of cash for valet tips. He found a $20 bill and a handful of quarters. $20, he whispered. I am Nathaniel Brooks, and I have $20 to my name. The humiliation was a physical sensation, like acid in his throat. He wasn't just broke. He was erased. The bank rep had mentioned identity verification issues. Veronica hadn't just taken the money. She had flagged his social security number as compromised. Until he could prove who he was in person at a federal level, he was a ghost in the system. He used the 20 to put gas in the car. It wasn't enough to fill the tank, but it would get him to Beacon. As he drove north, leaving the safety of the city, his mind raced. Arthur. Why Arthur had been his partner back in the day. Not in architecture, but in acquisitions. That was the polite word for it. They were young, hungry, and morally flexible. They flipped distressed properties in neighborhoods the city had forgotten. They evicted grandmothers. They cut corners on permits. They made a lot of money very quickly, and they hurt a lot of people doing it. But that was years ago. Nathaniel had cleaned up his image. He had rebranded. He became the respectable face of modern development. He had cut Arthur loose when Arthur got too greedy, too reckless. The last time he saw Arthur, he was threatening to go to the DA. Nathaniel had handled it. He had used his new connections to bury Arthur in lawsuits until the man was bankrupt and broken. Arthur should be in prison or dead. Why did Veronica know Arthur? The drive took 2 hours. The scenery changed from skyscrapers to trees and old brick factories. He followed the GPS to a dilapidated industrial park on the edge of town. The destination was a rusty warehouse with a faded sign, AP Salvage. Nathaniel parked the car. He stepped out, the wind biting through his expensive suit. This was a long way from the penthouse. He walked up to the metal door and banged on it. "Open up!" he shouted. A moment later, the door creaked open with a groan of rusted metal. Standing there was a man who looked like a ruin of a human being. He was in a wheelchair, his legs covered by a wool blanket. His face was scarred, unshaven, and his eyes were milky with cataracts. It was Arthur, but aged 20 years in 15. Arthur squinted up at him. "We're closed. Come back Monday." "Arthur," Nathaniel said, his voice trembling slightly. "It's me, Nate." The old man in the wheelchair froze. He leaned forward, squinting harder. Then a slow, toothless smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who just found a wounded animal. "Nate," Arthur rasped. "The great architect. You look expensive." "Cut the crap, Arthur. Where is she? Who?" "Veronica, or whatever her real name is. She left me a note. It led me here." Arthur chuckled. The sound turned into a hacking cough. He wheeled himself back, gesturing for Nathaniel to enter. "Veronica never heard of a Veronica, but I was expecting a visitor. She said you'd come when the money ran out." Nathaniel stepped into the warehouse. It was filled with junk old car parts, stacks of newspapers, broken furniture. It smelled of oil and rot. "She," Nathaniel asked. "Who is she?" Arthur spun his wheelchair around. "She's the one who's been waiting longer than I have, Nate. She's the one who found me in the gutter where you left me and asked for a story." "I don't have time for riddles, Arthur. She took $4 million. My money." "Your money." Arthur laughed again. "Nate, you never had your money. You had our money. You just kept my share." Nathaniel felt a surge of anger. He stepped forward, looming over the man in the chair. "I earned that money. I built the firm. You were a liability." "And now you're the liability," Arthur said softly. "You think this is about money, boy. You really don't see it, do you?" Arthur reached into the side pocket of his wheelchair and pulled out a manila envelope. He tossed it onto a dusty table between them. "She told me to give you this. She said it's the receipt." Nathaniel looked at the envelope. He didn't want to touch it. He felt like it was rigged with explosives. He reached out and opened it. Inside wasn't money. It was a photograph. It was an old, grainy photo taken maybe 25 years ago. It showed a community center. The Harlem Heritage Center. Nathaniel's breath hitched. That was the first big deal. The deal that made him. He and Arthur had bought the building for pennies after a suspicious fire damaged the structural integrity. They had condemned it, evicted the community programs, and turned it into luxury condos. There were rumors that the fire wasn't an accident. Rumors that someone had paid a local kid to leave a lit cigarette in the basement. Nathaniel had always denied it. He had buried the investigation. He flipped the photo over. On the back, written in the same elegant script as the note in the kitchen, was a single sentence. "My father died in that fire." Nathaniel stared at the words. The blood drained from his face. "Her father," he whispered. Arthur cackled. "You don't even remember, do you, the janitor? The old man who lived in the basement unit. He didn't get out, Nate. We were told the building was empty. But you didn't check, did you? You told me you checked." Nathaniel staggered back, his back hitting a stack of old tires. I didn't know." "She knows," Arthur said. "She's been planning this for 10 years, Nate. She didn't just want your money. She wanted your name. She wanted your legacy. And right now, while you're standing here in a junk pile with a cripple, she's releasing the documents to the press." Nathaniel's phone buzzed. He looked down. It was a notification from a news app. Breaking CEO Nathaniel Brooks, under investigation for arson and fraud. Historic cold case reopened. She didn't just freeze your accounts, Nate. Arthur whispered, his voice filled with dark glee. She froze your life. Nathaniel looked at the door. He had to run. But where? He had no money, no cards. And now the police would be looking for him. "Who is she?" Nathaniel demanded, grabbing Arthur by the collar of his dirty shirt. "What is her real name?" Arthur didn't flinch. "You know her as Veronica. But her real name is Simone. Simone Vance. And she just cashed out." The sound of sirens cut through the humid air of the salvage yard. They were distant but closing in fast. Nathaniel didn't say goodbye to Arthur. He didn't look back at the wheelchair-bound man who was cackling in the shadows of the warehouse. He ran. He scrambled into the black Mercedes, his hands shaking so violently he dropped the keys into the footwell. He cursed, scrabbling for them in the dark, his fingernails scraping against the plush carpet. He found the fob, jammed the start button, and the engine roared to life. As he peeled out of the gravel lot, the rear-view mirror flashed with blue and red lights, turning the corner 2 blocks away. They weren't looking for a speeder. They were looking for him. He drove manic, taking side streets, blowing through stop signs. His mind was a fractured kaleidoscope of panic, arson, fraud, murder. The words from the news alert burned in his brain. She planned this, he thought, his grip on the wheel tightening. Every smile, every dinner, every time she adjusted my tie. She was just waiting to slit my throat. He looked at the dashboard, GPS. The car was connected. The car was tracking him. If the police had a warrant, they could ping the Mercedes. He swerved into the parking lot of a grim, fluorescent-lit strip mall on the edge of town. He parked behind a dumpster, killing the engine. He couldn't take the car. It was a beacon. Nathaniel stepped out into the rain. It had started to pour, a cold, relentless deluge that soaked his Italian wool suit in seconds. He popped the trunk. He grabbed the tire iron. He didn't know why. Protection, a tool. It felt heavy and crude in his hand, a weapon for a thug, not a CEO. He walked away from the car. He walked away from the heated seats, the satellite radio, and the last remnant of his status. He walked for 3 miles until he reached the train station. He didn't go inside. There were cameras inside. He huddled under the concrete overhang of the platform, shivering. A group of teenagers walked by, laughing, smoking cigarettes. One of them, a boy in a hooded sweatshirt, looked at Nathaniel. "Nice suit, man," the kid sneered. "You lost or something? Get away from me," Nathaniel snapped. His voice lacked its usual authority. It sounded thin and wet. "Whoa, easy there, Wall Street," the kid laughed, flicking a cigarette butt near Nathaniel's expensive loafers. "Don't cry." Nathaniel gripped the tire iron inside his coat pocket. A week ago, he would have had security remove this kid from his sight. Now he was afraid. He was just a wet man in the dark. He needed a ticket, but his cards were frozen. He checked his pockets again. The $20 bill was gone, spent on gas. He had 4 quarters, $1. He couldn't buy a train ticket. He was trapped in Beacon. He spent the night under a bridge near the river. It was the lowest point of his life. He tried to sleep sitting up, clutching his briefcase to his chest. The smell of damp earth and urine filled his nose. Every shadow looked like a police officer. Every rustle of leaves sounded like handcuffs. As he shivered, memories invaded him. Not of Veronica Simone, but of the tenants he had evicted over the years. He remembered a woman, Mrs. Gable, crying as the sheriff put her furniture on the curb in Queens. He had watched from his car, checking emails. He hadn't felt anything then. Now, with the cold seeping into his bones, he felt it. The helplessness. The total lack of dignity. Is this the lesson, he thought bitterly? Is this your point? Simone. Morning broke grey and miserable. Nathaniel was stiff, his throat sore. He needed food. He needed a phone. He walked into a crowded diner near the highway. He kept his head down, sliding into a booth in the back. He looked like a wreck, mud on his shoes, stubble on his jaw hair plastered to his forehead. A waitress, a middle-aged woman with a name tag that read, Beatrice, walked over. She looked tired. "Coffee?" she asked, not looking up from her pad. "Please," Nathaniel rasped. "And do you have a phone I could use?" "My battery died." Beatrice looked at him then. Her eyes narrowed. She scanned his suit, ruined but clearly expensive. She looked at his watch, a Patek Philippe. He had forgotten he was wearing a $50,000 watch. "Payphone in the back," she said. "But you need coins." I don't have any change. Could I borrow $1? I'll pay you back. I'll send you $100, 1,000. Beatrice let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, I've heard that one before. Honey, if you're selling watches, try the pawn shop down the street. Don't hustle me for a phone call." She walked away. Nathaniel stared at her back. He felt a surge of rage, but it was quickly drowned by shame. He was a beggar. He looked at the watch. He could pawn it. It was worth a fortune. But selling it felt like admitting it was over. That watch was a gift to himself when he made his first 10 million. Survival, he told himself. Survive first. Revenge later. He left the diner and found the pawn shop. The man behind the counter, a guy named Lou, looked at the watch under a loupe. "It's real," Lou grunted. "Give you 500 for it." 500, Nathaniel choked. "It's worth 50,000. Not without papers it ain't, and you look like you stole it." Lou crossed his arms. "Take it or leave it." Nathaniel took the $500. It felt like selling his soul for a sandwich. With cash in hand, he bought a burner phone and a prepaid bus ticket back to the city. He also bought a cheap change of clothes from a thrift store, jeans, a flannel shirt, a baseball cap. He changed in the bus station bathroom, stuffing his suit into a trash can. He boarded the bus. He sat in the back, pulling the cap low. He turned on the burner phone and dialed the one number he had memorized. Not a friend, not a lawyer. Fletcher. Fletcher was a private investigator who operated in the gray zones. He used to do background checks on Nathaniel's competitors. He was expensive, discreet, and had zero morals. "Yeah." Fletcher's voice was gravelly. "It's Brooks," Nathaniel whispered. Silence on the line. Then a low whistle. "You are a very popular man today, Mr. Brooks. Every news channel is running your face. The architect of arson. Catchy headline." "I didn't do it, Fletcher. You know I didn't set that fire. Doesn't matter what I know. Matters what the police have. And rumor is they have a witness affidavit signed by your old partner, Arthur. Arthur is senile. He's bitter. He's a witness. And the woman, the fiancée, she's the one doing this," Nathaniel hissed. "Her name is Simone Archer, or maybe Simone Hayes. She's the daughter of the janitor who died in the Harlem fire. She stole my money, Fletcher. She stole everything." "Revenge," Fletcher mused. "Classic. So what do you want from me?" "Your accounts are frozen. You can't pay me. I have assets the banks don't know about." Nathaniel lied. I have a stash. Cash. Gold. I can pay you triple your rate. But I need you to find her. I don't work on credit, Brooks. I'll bring you 10,000 cash tonight as a retainer. Nathaniel said, his mind racing. He had $400 left. He was lying through his teeth. 10,000 tonight. Fletcher paused. Meet me at the old shipyard in Brooklyn. Dock 4. Midnight. Don't be late. And Brooks, if I smell a cop, I leave you there. Nathaniel hung up. He had 12 hours to find $10,000. He looked out the window as the bus entered the Lincoln Tunnel. The city lights were welcoming him back. But this wasn't his city anymore. It was a battlefield. The bus dropped him off at Port Authority. Nathaniel moved through the crowds, head down. He felt exposed like a deer in a wolf pen. He needed money. Fast. He couldn't go to his friends. They would turn him in to save their own reputations. He couldn't go to his office. The feds would be swarming it. He thought of the glass house. It was a project he had finished 2 years ago, a hypermodern mansion in Tribeca that was currently on the market for $20 million. It was empty staged with furniture and waiting for a buyer. Nathaniel knew the security codes. He had designed the system. He took the subway, another humiliation, down to Tribeca. He waited in the alley until the street was clear, then punched the code into the service entrance keypad. Green light. He slipped inside. The house smelled of lavender and new paint. It was silent. He went straight to the master study. In the wall safe behind a painting the owners usually kept nothing. It was a staging house. But Nathaniel knew something the realtors didn't. During the construction, he had installed a hidden floor safe in the basement utility room. He used it to store sensitive blueprints and occasionally emergency cash for contractors who preferred to be paid off the books. He prayed he had left something there. He went down to the basement. He found the loose tile, pried it up, and spun the dial. Click. He opened it. It was empty. No, not empty. There was a single piece of paper inside. Nathaniel picked it up. It was a receipt, a donation receipt, received from Nathaniel Brooks, $50,000 in cash, donated to the Harlem Fire Victims Memorial Fund. Date, yesterday. Nathaniel stared at the paper. She had been here. Simone had been here. She knew about the safe. She knew about everything. She's thorough, a voice said from the shadows. Nathaniel spun around, grabbing a heavy flashlight from the shelf. Standing at the bottom of the stairs was Conrad, his former corporate attorney. Conrad was slick, oily, and wearing a suit that cost more than the house. Conrad, Nathaniel breathed. How did you find me? I didn't, Conrad said, stepping into the light. Simone told me you'd come here. She said this was your panic room. You're working with her. Nathaniel felt the betrayal like a knife in his chest. Conrad was the one who helped him bury the Arthur lawsuits. Working with her. No. Conrad smiled, a thin reptilian expression. I'm working for her. You see, Nate, when you stopped paying my retainers last year, because you thought you were untouchable, I got offended. Simone, she offered me a partnership. She has all the files, Nate. The bribes, the zoning violations, the safety inspector payoffs. You're a lawyer, Nathaniel spat. You have attorney-client privilege. You can't use that against me. I'm not using it. Conrad shrugged. I'm just representing a new client who happens to have found them. It's amazing what you leave lying around when you're arrogant. Where is she, Conrad? Nathaniel stepped forward, raising the flashlight. Tell me where she is, or I swear to God. Conrad didn't flinch. He pulled a gun from his jacket pocket. a small silver pistol. She's gone, Nate. She's on a plane. Or maybe a boat. She wanted me to give you a message, though. Nathaniel froze. The gun was pointed at his chest. She said to tell you that the freeze isn't just financial. It's structural. You built your life on a foundation of sand, Nathaniel. She just waited for the tide to come in. I'll kill you, Nathaniel whispered. No, you won't. You're a coward, Nate. You pay people to do your killing, like you paid those kids to scare the tenants in Harlem. You didn't mean for the old man to die, sure, but you lit the match. Conrad lowered the gun slightly. I'm here to give you a choice, a deal. What deal? Turn yourself in. Confess to the fraud. Confess to the bribery. Leave the arson out of it. We can't prove you ordered the fire directly, and Simone knows that. But confess to the financial crimes. Take 10 years. And if I don't, then she releases the black file. The one with the emails between you and the city council regarding the rezoning. The one that implicates everyone. If that leaks, you won't go to a white-collar prison, Nate. You'll be killed before trial by the people you're exposing. The powerful people. Nathaniel's mind raced. 10 years in prison. Or death. Why is she giving me an out? Nathaniel asked. She hates me. She doesn't hate you, Conrad said. She pities you. She wants you to live long enough to be nothing, to be a nobody. Nathaniel looked at the gun. Then he looked at the stairs. He lunged, not at Conrad, but at the light switch. He slapped it, plunging the basement into darkness. Bang! The gun went off. The bullet chipped the concrete wall inches from Nathaniel's head. Nathaniel scrambled in the dark, knowing the layout better than Conrad. He rolled behind the furnace. Don't be stupid, Nate, Conrad yelled. There's no way out. But there was. There was an old coal chute that led to the back alley. It was tight, filthy, and hadn't been used in 50 years. Nathaniel squeezed into the chute. He clawed his way up soot, filling his lungs, the rough brick tearing his clothes. He heard Conrad stumbling in the dark, cursing. He pushed the metal grate open and spilled out into the alleyway, gasping for air. He was covered in black soot, bleeding and terrified. He ran. He ran until his lungs burned. He didn't have the 10,000 for Fletcher. He didn't have a lawyer. He didn't have a safe house. But he had one thing Conrad had slipped up on. She's on a plane. Conrad had said it. A slip of the tongue. But earlier, the bank had said the money was transferred 48 hours ago. If she was fleeing, she would have gone then. Why was she still communicating with Conrad? She wasn't gone. She was still here. She was watching him fall. Nathaniel stopped running. He stood on a street corner, panting. A plan began to form in his shattered mind. If she wanted a show, he would give her one. He looked at a passing bus. On the side was an advertisement for a charity gala happening tonight. The Archway Foundation Annual Ball, hosted at the Brooks Plaza, his building. And the guest of honor, the anonymous donor who saved the Harlem Community Center. Nathaniel stared at the poster. The donor wasn't anonymous to him anymore. She would be there. She would be there to take her victory lap, hidden in plain sight, watching her father's memory be honored with his money. Nathaniel smiled. It was a grim, blood-streaked smile. "Okay, Simone," he whispered to the rain. "You want to dance? Let's dance." The Brooks Plaza Hotel was a 40-story monolith of glass and steel, a testament to Nathaniel's ego. He had designed every inch of it. He knew that the ventilation shafts on the west side were wide enough for a man to crawl through. He knew that the service elevator on the basement level had a manual override key hidden behind the fire extinguisher panel, a fail-safe he had insisted on for emergency maintenance. But really it was for situations exactly like this. Nathaniel stood in the alley rain, mixing with the soot on his face. He looked like a spectre from a nightmare. He waited for a delivery truck to exit the loading dock, and as the heavy roller door began to descend, he rolled under it, scraping his shoulder against the wet concrete. He was in. The loading dock was bustling with activity. Caterers in white coats were shouting orders, loading carts with trays of lobster and champagne. Nathaniel hid behind a stack of crates, his heart hammering against his ribs. He was invisible to them, just another shadow in the corner. He made his way to the service elevator. He found the key. He turned it. The doors slid open with a whisper. He didn't go to the ballroom. Not yet. He pressed the button for the 35th floor, the penthouse suites. He needed a skin. He couldn't walk into a black tie gala, looking like a chimney sweep. The hallway on the 35th floor was lined with plush velvet carpet. He pressed his ear against the door of suite 3502. He heard the faint sound of a television. Someone was inside. He moved to 3504. Silence. He pulled a credit card, one of the frozen ones, from his pocket. It wouldn't buy him a coffee, but the magnetic strip was thick enough to shim the lock if the deadbolt wasn't thrown. It was a trick Arthur had taught him 20 years ago, before the money, before the suits. Click. The door opened. The room was dark, smelling of expensive cologne and cedar. A tuxedo was hanging on the valet stand, freshly pressed. On the dresser, a pair of diamond cufflinks and a heavy platinum watch. Nathaniel didn't hesitate. He stripped off his filthy clothes, leaving them in a pile on the floor. He went into the marble shower, turning the water to scalding hot. He scrubbed the soot from his skin until he was raw. He shaved with the guest razor, watching his face emerge from the foam in the mirror. He looked older. The stress of the last 3 days had etched deep lines around his mouth. His eyes were bloodshot. But as he slicked his hair back and stepped into the stolen tuxedo, something shifted. He wasn't the fugitive anymore. He was Nathaniel Brooks, the CEO, the architect. The tuxedo was a size too big, but he cinched the trousers and adjusted the cummerbund. He put on the cufflinks. He slipped the stolen watch onto his wrist. He looked in the mirror. "Showtime," he whispered. He took the elevator down to the grand ballroom. As the doors opened, the sound of a string quartet washed over him. The air smelled of expensive perfume and lilies. The security guard at the entrance, a man named Hank, who had worked for Nathaniel for 5 years, looked at him. Hank's eyes widened. He reached for his earpiece. "Don't," Nathaniel said, his voice low and commanding. He walked right up to Hank, invading his personal space. "If you touch that earpiece, Hank, you're fired. I'm still the owner of this building. I'm still the man who signs your checks." It was a bluff. Nathaniel couldn't sign a check for a stick of gum. But Hank didn't know the extent of the freeze. He hesitated. "Mr. Brooks, the police were here earlier. They're looking for you. Let them look. I'm here to clarify a misunderstanding. Now step aside." Hank stepped aside. Nathaniel walked into the ballroom. The room went quiet. It started as a ripple near the door and spread like a wave until the only sound was the confused squeak of a violin player trailing off. 300 faces turned to look at him. These were his peers, the city's elite. Bankers, politicians, developers. People who had drunk his wine and laughed at his jokes for a decade. Now they looked at him like he was a leper. But Nathaniel didn't look at them. He looked at the stage. Standing at the podium, bathed in a spotlight, was a woman. She was wearing a dress made of emerald silk that clung to her frame like liquid money. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the long, elegant curve of her neck. It was Veronica. No, it was Simone. She stopped speaking mid-sentence. She looked down at him from the stage. Her expression didn't change. She didn't look scared. She didn't look surprised. She looked disappointed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Simone said into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. "It seems we have an unexpected guest, the man of the hour." Nathaniel walked through the crowd. The sea of people parted for him, recoiling as if he were radioactive. He walked straight to the stage and climbed the stairs. He stood next to her. He could smell her perfume, jasmine, and sandalwood. It was the scent on his pillow every morning for 2 years. "You look beautiful," Nathaniel said, his voice amplified by the microphone she was holding. "For a thief." The crowd gasped. A low murmur broke out. Simone smiled. It was a cold, razor-sharp smile. "I didn't steal anything, Nathaniel. I just reallocated funds. I returned them to their original owners." "You ruined me," he hissed, grabbing her wrist. "You froze my life. You framed me for a form I didn't start. Didn't you?" Simone pulled her wrist away, rubbing the spot where he had touched her. "You signed the order to cut the security budget for that building. You bribed the inspector to ignore the faulty wiring. You didn't light the match, Nate, but you poured the gasoline. That's business," Nathaniel shouted, turning to the crowd. "You all know it. That's how this city is built. You think your hands are clean." He pointed at a councilman in the front row. "Councilman Higgins, you took a $50,000 consulting fee to approve the zoning for this very hotel." Higgins turned pale and started backing away. "And you," Nathaniel pointed at a banker. "You laundered the money for the Midtown project." "Stop it, Nathaniel," Simone said softly. "You're not saving yourself. You're digging the hole deeper." "I'm taking you down with me," Nathaniel snarled. "I know who you are. Simone Archer, the janitor's daughter. You think you can play in the big leagues? I will bury you in litigation until your grandchildren are paying my legal fees." Simone reached into the podium and pulled out a small remote control. "I expected you to say that," she said. "That's why I didn't come alone." She pressed a button. The massive projection screen behind them, which had been displaying the logo of the charity, flickered. A video started playing. The video was grainy, shot from a hidden camera. It showed an office. Nathaniel's old office from 15 years ago. Nathaniel was there, younger, sitting behind a desk. Across from him was a man in a leather jacket. Arthur. The audio was crisp. "Arthur, the tenants won't leave Nate. The old man in the basement says he has rights." Young Nathaniel. "I don't care about his rights, Arthur. I care about the timeline. We have investors breathing down our necks." Arthur. "So what do you want me to do?" "Scare them." Young Nathaniel. "Do whatever it takes. Smoke them out if you have to. I want that building empty by Friday. If it burns, it burns. Just make sure the insurance is up to date." The ballroom was dead silent. Nathaniel stared at the screen. He felt the blood drain from his extremities. He didn't remember saying that. He remembered the meeting, but the words. "If it burns, it burns." That's deepfake," Nathaniel screamed. "That's AI. She fabricated it." But the video continued. It showed Nathaniel handing Arthur a thick envelope of cash. Young Nathaniel. "Here, $5,000. Buy some kerosene." And Arthur. "Don't tell me the details. I want plausible deniability." The screen went black. Nathaniel turned to Simone. She was looking at him with eyes that were filled with tears. "My father didn't die because of faulty wiring, Nate," she whispered. He died because you paid $5,000 to burn his home down. Nathaniel stammered. I didn't mean for him to die. That's your defense. Simone stepped back to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the police have had this footage for 3 hours. The man standing next to me isn't just a bankrupt CEO. He is a murderer. At that moment, the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. It wasn't the police. It was worse. A group of people walked in, about 20 of them. They were dressed in simple clothes, looking out of place amidst the tuxedos and gowns. Nathaniel recognized them. He recognized the faces from the eviction notices. He recognized the woman, Mrs. Gable, whom he had thrown out into the snow. He recognized the families from the Harlem Heritage Center. They walked silently toward the stage. They formed a wall of humanity between Nathaniel and the exit. What is this? Nathaniel backed away, bumping into the podium. Security. Get them out. But security didn't move. Hank stood with his arms crossed, staring at the floor. They are the board of directors for the new foundation, Simone said. The foundation funded by your entire net worth. What? The transfer I made, Simone explained calmly. I didn't steal it for myself, Nate. I donated it. Every cent. $4.2 million. Plus the offshore accounts. It's all gone. It belongs to the Harlem Fire Survivors Trust now. Nathaniel's knees gave way. He slumped against the podium. You can't do that, he whispered. It's illegal. So is arson, a deep voice boomed. 2 uniformed officers stepped onto the stage, followed by a detective in a trench coat. The detective held up a pair of handcuffs. Nathaniel Brooks, the detective said, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit arson insurance fraud and manslaughter. Nathaniel looked at the crowd. He looked for an ally. He looked for Conrad. Conrad was standing by the dessert table, sipping a martini. He raised his glass to Nathaniel and winked. Nathaniel looked at Simone. Why? He asked, his voice breaking. We had a life. You said you loved me. Simone leaned in close so only he could hear. I loved the man I thought you were, she said. But then I found the tape in your safe. You kept it as leverage against Arthur, didn't you? You kept the evidence of your own crime just to control someone else. That's when I knew. You aren't a man, Nate. You're just a ledger. And I just balanced you out. The detective grabbed Nathaniel's arm. He spun him around. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut. As they dragged him off the stage, the photographers rushed forward. Flash bulbs exploded like fireworks. Nathaniel tried to hide his face, but there was nowhere to hide. He saw the headlines in his mind, the architect of his own destruction. He was led through the crowd of victims. Mrs. Gable looked him in the eye. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She just pitied him. And that was the hardest karma of all. He wanted their fear. He wanted their anger. But their pity, that meant he was already dead. 6 months later, the cell was 6 feet by 8 feet, smaller than the walk-in closet in the penthouse. Nathaniel sat on the edge of the metal cot. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that chafed his skin. His hair was grey now, and he hadn't shaved in a week. He wasn't Nathaniel Brooks anymore. He was inmate 894 Rue. The trial had been swift. The video was damning. Conrad had testified against him in exchange for immunity. Arthur had died in his sleep 2 days after the arrest, leaving a deathbed confession that sealed Nathaniel's fate. 25 years. No parole for 15. He would be 60 years old when or if he got out. He stood up and walked to the tiny window. It was just a slit in the concrete high up on the wall. If he stood on his tiptoes, he could see a sliver of the sky. Sometimes he imagined he could see the city skyline. He imagined he could see the Brooks Plaza. But he knew they had renamed it. It was the Archer Center now, a community hub for arts and housing. The guard banged on the door. "Brooks, you got mail." A letter slid through the slot. Nathaniel picked it up. It was a plain white envelope. No return address. He opened it. Inside was a photograph. It was a picture of a ring. The ring, the 3-carat diamond oval cut. But it wasn't on a finger. It was in a display case at an auction house. Below the photo was a clipping from a newspaper. Rare diamond auctioned for record price proceeds to fund college scholarships for inner city youth. And on the back of the photo, in that familiar, elegant script, final payment made. Account closed. Nathaniel stared at the photo. He traced the shape of the ring with his thumb. He started to laugh. It was a dry, rasping sound that bounced off the concrete walls. He laughed until his stomach hurt. He laughed until tears streamed down his face. She had left the ring on the table to make a point. She had sold it to make a future. He sat back down on the cot. He looked around his empty cell. He had spent his life building towers, obsessed with height, with looking down on the world. He realized now that he had never actually built a home. The silence in the cell was heavy. It pressed against his eardrums. "Well played, Simone," he whispered to the empty air. "Well played." He lay back on the cot and closed his eyes. For the first time in 20 years, Nathaniel Brooks didn't have a plan. He didn't have a scheme. He had nothing. And in that nothingness, finally, there was quiet. And that, my friends, is the story of Nathaniel Brooks. A man who thought he could buy loyalty, build a legacy on ashes, and outrun his own shadow. He learned the hard way that the higher you climb, the harder you fall, especially when someone you trust kicks the ladder out from under you. Simone didn't just take his money. She took his illusion of power. It's a brutal reminder that the truth always keeps receipts and karma doesn't have an expiration date. What would you have done if you were Simone? Was it justice, or did she go too far by destroying his entire life? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal and cold hard justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Until next time, watch who you trust and keep your secrets safe.